It's Hugh Foster on the bass again. Time for another quick lick. This one's all about using your palm to mute the strings and playing with your thumb and a couple of fingers. A bit like, say, Pino Palladino and plenty other people. But yeah, for many people, he's probably the person who you've seen use this technique. Anyway, don't forget, if you like that and you'd like to get the backing track and the transcription in tab and standard notation, head over to my Patreon. Before we break down the specifics of this one, let's have a little look at the palm muting technique for bass. So if you're brand new to it, place your palm perpendicular to the strings like so, side of your palm like that, and then just let your hand fall onto the strings. And hopefully, naturally, after a while, you should end up with your thumb on the E string. Okay? And generally speaking, what I like to do with this technique is play, the lower strings with the thumb, and then the higher strings with the first and second finger. For example, if I was to do an arpeggio, I could approach it that way. But the great thing is, there's no set way to do it, and I think just being comfortable with the thumb's going to be the main digit here, but at least one of the fingers is going to come in handy. Some people even do thumb, first finger, second finger, and ring finger. If you can nail that technique, great. I've never been particularly good with my ring finger, so I'm not using it in this particular exercise. This particular exercise is in the key of G major, just sits on a G major 7 vamp, and it also is a 16th shuffle. So that's going to be and what that does is it lends itself well to triplets. So I've got a couple of examples of places where you're going to use your thumb and at least one other finger to approach that triplet. But also to help with being able to play stuff quickly, it incorporates a lot of hammer-ons, so you don't have to, do lots of fast stuff with one particular digit, especially that thumb. It can be quite tricky to play fast with the thumb. Also, what I'd say as a general pointer, say if you're brand new to this, but for example, you're fairly well versed in slap bass, you can think of them as kind of very sort of like close siblings in terms of technique. You could play this using the slap bass technique. I think in this particular case, I don't know if it would be the most tasteful thing in the world. I haven't actually practiced that. There we go. Especially that bit at the end. Same sort of principles apply. You're, using a thumb and a finger, and occasionally using your second finger when you need it, as you would if you were doing that there with the the two pops. But let's rewind. We're not doing it this way. We're doing the muter technique where there's lots of attack from the note, but not a lot of the decay, and that creates a real sort of funky sound, and yeah, really great for funk, soul, all kind of stuff in that genre. Anyway, I've spoken enough, I think. Let's actually break it down. Like I said, it's in G major. Okay, and for the most part, it uses the G major pentatonic scale, and there's a couple of instances where it doesn't, some chromatic stuff, and there's a couple of instances where it uses notes from that scale, but you create arpeggios. For example, in bar 4, where you do an outline of an E minor 7 arpeggio. Let's hear the whole thing slowed down, and then I'll break down the tricky bits. There's two of them, really. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go around again. So a couple of bits to break down. Let's just go one more pass through, just even slower, just to catch those tricky moments. 1, 2, 3, 4. Two key moments that are really tricky to look out for, at least at first. Bar 4, where we've got, like I mentioned earlier, an outline of an E minor 7 arpeggio. And this is where the first and only time actually where we get the second finger on the right hand involved. We're going to start with an open A, hammer on onto the 7th fret of the A. All right, and that's all played with the thumb on the right hand. And then we play the 5th fret of the D, and then the 7th fret of the G. Okay? And then to finish off, back onto the A string, moving down 7, 5. And for which way you play it with your left hand, you can do first finger here on the 5th fret, second and third fingers on the 7th fret, or third and fourth fingers on the 7th fret. Whichever one is more comfortable for you. Last couple of bars are tricky for a couple of reasons. So, bar 7, alternate between thumb and finger. You could play it all with the thumb, but I do quite like at speed being able to go do that, and yeah, it's a good way of, like, you know, much like you would alternate with the two fingers if you were playing regular finger style. I feel like it's a little bit cleaner with the thumb and the finger, and also just gets you used to, you know, using the technique a bit more. The very last bit, this is tricky in its own way, but once you break it down, you can start to see the pattern emerging, hopefully. In halftime, on beat 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on to beat 1 again, ending on G. So we've got a repeating pattern going up the fretboard. We start with a low note, play with the thumb, then a high note, play with the finger, and then the open E at the end of each group of triplets to enable you to hammer on to the next note up, then the octave of that note, again open note, next note up, 2nd fret, octave, open, 3. So sped up, that's... So at speed, that's going to look really impressive. The actual theory behind it is relatively simple. So I think that just about covers everything from me today with this one. Do let me know if there are any obvious uses of palm muting on bass that I've clearly missed out, because the only person I can think of right now is Pino Palladino. I think he lives in every bass player's head rent-free to a certain extent, but there are probably plenty of other bass players who, you know, use this technique really, really well, and I have just had a complete mind blank there. So yeah, leave me a comment below if you can think of any other bass players who use the palm muted technique. Cool. Anyway, I've been Hugh Foster on the bass. Don't forget to get the backing track and the transcription over on my Patreon. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.